Okay, we start with the running gear, and this gets a little bit tricky at times. Gluing these are the return rollers. I'm gluing those in place because there's not enough of a location to let them turn. The hull sides go on next. They fit pretty nicely. You just want a bead of glue down the inside and they're good to go. Do a little bit of sort of manual lining up, but they fit okay. Come on to the fun part. It's always a little nervy when you take a part off the sprue and promptly take a saw to it. It's not too bad. There's actually a moulded on plate that actually marks the place you have to cut. I think it's 43 millimeters is the end you want, or the final result. Basically, because that the wheel at the back, the idler, on this model it's on the ground, but the kit is designed to have it off the ground, so you have to change the back end of the running gear here. And you again putting the this is now the running gear on, or the wheels that take the weight. And again, there's not much of a stub here to put them on, so I'm gluing them on just to make sure they stay in place. Here we're adding a mud guard. You could actually do this later, but it does fit quite nicely. But again, with hindsight, I'd probably have done this later just to make life a little easier for me a bit later in the build. Now back to the running gear again, attaching the other half of where the wheels that take the weight, those are sandwiched between. Like I said, there's not much of a stub there to hold them in place, so it's safer just to glue them in place to hold them secure. Doing here is adding the main suspension spring. That actually has to fit down inside the part that you see there. The diagram's not awfully clear on that, but yeah, if the lower it fits, the better. Now we're adding there's another leaf spring that's actually attached to each pair of wheels. And so we're just fitting those in place. Now we'll come back to working on the where we sliced the end off. Basically just need to use plenty of glue on here just to make sure you have a really good firm fit. And but it does seem to work okay. There is a bit of an overlap there, two plates put together, and there's a bit of an overlap to give you enough strength there to hold it all together and to support the wheel that we're going to add in a little bit. is the idler wheel. The hole in the middle needed hollowing out a little bit. It wasn't big enough to accept the pin on the arms that are going to hold it in place. Now onto the upper hull. Starts with a pretty big lump. You've got two side panels to put in as well at some point. But here I'm just putting, I think this is a vision port, just putting on the top there. Pretty simple fit. This is fitting these side panels in. You have to just stretch open the hole they're going to fit in and just mess with it a little bit just to get it to fit. I found that one side fit perfectly and another side needed a little bit of filler finally. Now fitting the idler onto the main suspension, and again I glued that in place because there's not enough pin to sort of fit in the hole to keep it securely in place. So I figured if I just stick some glue, make sure everything lines up and is flat, then we'll be good to go. Here adding a couple of handles that go on. I think these ones are engine doors. Again, with hindsight, I think I should have added these right at the end because I think I knocked them off a couple of times. Thankfully after this I did leave the other handles off until right at the very end. Making here is basically engine air intake. It comes through a grill at the top, but that's the big part is the top, and then you have to put the sides on yourself. Basically that you have to assemble that from 4 parts, and it's a little bit fiddly, but it works okay. And then when you fit it to the upper hull, it fits pretty well. There you see it in place on the back of the hull there. You can just let it sit there and just run a bead of glue along it. This is now fitting, basically getting the running gear all together, fitting a part at the front of the running gear that allows us to fit the return rollers, the very first thing we did. And this is a bit fiddly. There's no real locating points for it, so you just have to be careful with it and do the best you can to get everything lined up and in place. That's the engine exhaust going on. Now that was a bit fiddly because the exhaust, as you see there, that's one half of it and there's another half of it. It actually, for once, it would have been an awful lot easier if we'd actually had the tube of the exhaust as one part and the 2 brackets that connect it to the hull as 2 other parts. And they're just butt joins. There's no pins or anything to get lined up. So this was a bit fiddly, and basically just get the thing on there, and then the 2 joins in the middle, I put some filler around that and just sanded it down. then there's a bracket to the back there for holding something. I'm not quite sure what though. And that's the gunman clip going on. And that's the 20mm cannon. And I drilled the end out as it wasn't hollow. But I don't actually attach that now, I left that separate for painting. So here's a couple of the main final two parts, still a bit of work to do on those. I left a lot of small parts on clips for painting to make life easy for myself. And here's the finished product, basically some fancy masking to get the colour blocks on there, which was just a bit fiddly, but it was okay. Final sort of quirk was the tracks were too long. Probably because the rear wheel of the idler has changed position, which so I had to trim the edges of the tracks to get them to work. The running gear is the tricky bit on this one really, and I'd probably spend more time working on that if I was to do another one of these. I still didn't get, there's one side just doesn't work quite right, so I'd spend more time on that. Other than that, it's not too bad. Definitely not a kit for beginners though, but overall it's a neat kit of a unique subject, and it'll look pretty good on the shelf, and it is quite tiny. Put it next to a German Panzer, and it's about 1/6 of the size of that, so it's pretty neat.